Hey guys, this is GamerCow. Welcome to another Pokemon trading card game history video. I'm going to try and be mostly positive throughout this one because honestly our first testing session has reminded me why I didn't even play this set. But it's fine, the Sword and Shield era has plenty of time to get going, so maybe it'll get better. But maybe it won't because this is also the end of days, for now anyway. This set came out in around about February of 2020. And if anyone remembers what the situation in the world was like at that point, uh, we weren't able to play on real life events for almost all of this one. We had OCIC at the beginning, we had a couple of regionals that happened and small special events and stuff. No event, I think, that topped like 200 players. And then everything had to shut down. And everything from there is like grassroots online stuff and whatever limited data we can get about the Players' Cup. So, all of those that happened as well. It's gonna be rough, to say the least, but that's mostly just because the grassroots stuff doesn't necessarily have as many top tier decks and players and stuff involved in them, so it'll be tough. We'll just have to see how it goes. And this set does not give me a good first impression for playing this format either. I don't know, I just really don't like this set. I'll be honest, there's not much in here which is interesting to me, and there's a lot of complications with old cards that are now suddenly becoming like too ridiculous as well. There's a lot of rule changes that happen going into Generation 8 here as well, so I want to try and briefly cover those as much as I can. The major one is that we are now no longer able to play a supported card going first, so this limits a lot of what we can do. We still can't attack going first either. It's basically the same as what the current standard is like. And it's really annoying at the moment, actually, because we have gotten some ball search stuff here, but only being able to play items and whatnot means that we're having a hard time trying to find our setup basics and stuff to start. It just, yeah, we're not getting those good openings like we were quite a bit in the past, so, you know, it is what it is. The type changes and stuff have happened a lot here as well. Gen 8 introduced a lot of, to me, very stupid type changes, and I could rant about this for ages. I'm going to try and keep it as brief as I can. The main changes are that Fairy type as a whole has been completely removed. We don't get a good example in this first set because the only Fairy type is being treated as the Psychic type that it's related to, but Fairy in its own right has been moved into the Psychic typing. It still retains its metal weakness. I forget if they have a resistance actually, but we'll see that next set, I think. As a whole, the types have gotten universal in terms of what their weakness and resistances are as well. So the Psychic typing is now weak to dark and resistant to fighting. Same as the Ghost typing, actually. So like, I'm a bit annoyed with that, to be honest, because it seems a bit weird, but whatever. At least Mewtwo wouldn't hit itself for weakness if it was printed now. I guess there's that. You will notice that resistance is minus 30 as well now. There aren't very many resistances in the game, and it's usually just fighting, to be honest. But yeah, it's now minus 30 whenever it does come up, so I suppose there is that. The poison typing has been shifted into dark instead of psychic, which I hate because it's dumb. But whatever, it's now weak to fighting because the actual dark type is now weak to grass. I guess the dark is now being treated for its like bug thing, and so like, that's what they want, is like the bug typing being in grass. They want it to be being there. This will be for the ground typing that fighting is the weakness, but the problem is fighting is resisted by poison. So, you know, that's another stupid one. And this now means, if you've been paying attention, that poison types are super effective against the Psychic type and the Ghost type, which is completely incorrect. They will not be super effective against Fairy, because Fairy isn't weak to Dark. So that doesn't make any sense at all. And the other major one is the Steel types are now, or Metal type is now resistant to Grass again, like it used to be in Generations 2 and 3. Instead of Psychic. The only reason it changed in the first place is because the Poison type went from Grass to Psychic. So now that the Poison type is in Dark, Metal types are not resistant to Dark. Doesn't make any sense, but whatever. That is just what they wanted to do, I suppose. The last major change is that water types, Lapras being treated as a water type here, are universally lightning weak instead of grass weak. It wasn't even universal before, because like Empoleon was weak to lightning, for example, and Gyarados tended to be, but they are now universally lightning weak, which means when Swampert gets reprinted, just like in Generation 3, it will be weak to lightning when it should be immune to it. Just TCG things, right? Otherwise, nothing else really changes. Resistance has been downplayed for a very long time. I guess there's no metal resistance on electric types anymore, so woo, I suppose. Sudowoodo is not water weak anymore because it suffers some universal change as well, because the rock and ground types are all grass weak, so sure, I guess. And that's mostly it on that front. So moving on, we also have some card errata stuff as well. The most important ones are the up to erratas that we have here, which is Energy Retrieval and Palpad in the main set here. These will now shuffle up to 2 energy, the basic supported cards, or like add up to 2 basic energy from the discard to the hand. So before, if you had 2 cards, you had to take back or shuffle 2 cards. Now you can only take the 1. Might not sound like too big of a difference at the moment, but when we get other reprints like Energy Recycler or Super Rod later on, they are actually important to know that you are doing this sort of thing, because there will be times where you only want the 1 back because it will like be too much of a deck thickening, or your hand gets too clogged up with the Energy Retrieval. Sometimes you just need 1, so yeah. There are other erratas to like Lumberry, Citrus Berry, like there's some major stuff to Hyper Potion and Quick Ball here as well, but we'll talk about those when we actually get to them. The berries are more just being able to use old ones as well, like they think they've been slightly nerfed here. Lumberry actually has one thing going for it in terms of the new like card wording changes. Instead of healing special conditions, it now recovers from special conditions. As far as saying like actual damage healing and special condition recovery, I guess have been delineated in terms of their card text, sure. The Professors are the other main sort of bit in here to look at. Professor's Research is now a global card. They fixed the issue from Professor Juniper Sycamore going from Gen 5 to Gen 6 by just printing 1 card called Professor's Research and having the subtext for which professor it is there. You can play 4 copies of any Professor's Research, and there are like 6 or 7, I think, different professors at the moment that we have the stuff for, including the one from Pokemon Go if you really want that. So there you go. Boss's Orders next set will have the same thing going for it as well. Pokemon Checkup is now a thing that swaps out the between turns thing. It's a phrase change. It basically does the same thing, but some cards will refer to Pokemon Checkup instead of doing an effect between turns. So, like mostly like a heal type thing. And then, while regulation marks are also a thing now as well, that's kind of an intriguing note at the very least. We see the regulation bit down the bottom. When we get to the Sword and Shield on Solar bit, this will make it a lot easier to determine what actually is and isn't in format, because it's which regulation mark does it have, so that's kind of useful. And then the last sort of bit, there's a lot of reminder text removed because there were some edge cases that came up where the reminder text actually caused incorrect rulings to happen. The example they give was like Persian's Slashback GX attack to switch to Heatran GX, because Heatran's Burning Road ability will activate even though it doesn't like say it should, because it's a once per turn before you attack on the reminder text. That reminder bit has been removed, so there you go. Right, now we've got the housekeeping bit out of the way, let's talk about some actual card effects and stuff. The promos here, I'm only going to go over really the Caracosta because it's the only particularly good one. There's a couple more of the evolutions, but we don't have energy evolutions, so they'd be useless anyway. The Poltergeist is funny because it can put energy from the active to the bottom of the deck if it gets damaged when active, but whatever. And the Pokemon V that we see here are precursors for the next set. when the VMAXs for the starters come out as well. So because these are evolving Pokemon V, they're not as good as standalone ones, so they're not really worth talking about. Caracosta is kind of cool because it's a massive 250 HP GX, the final GX, and the final Caracosta for at time of recording. So that's kind of neat. It takes 90 less damage when it's at full health, so it effectively has 340 HP, which is the same as the tankiest Pokemon VMAX we'll see in this set. And its attacks are fine. Like, Stone Edge GX is decent if you've not managed to do like much with Pokemon Research Lab beforehand. You just get to, or more likely, if you've discarded a bunch of fossil stuffs like late in the game, if you get a bunch of Tortuga or Aerodactyls and stuff like that back, it's kind of cool. Its attack is a little expensive, but you can at least triple acceleration energy it if you want to, or if you're still playing the same deck that Sai played before, it's not too difficult to charge in within a couple of turns. So yeah, good typing as well. Water and fighting are not bad types to have for weakness, so it's alright. Water being from the non-GX Caracosta, of course. Other than that, I've got a bunch of interest stuff over here. Like, it's not really that necessary for this set, to be fair, but this is about the best of it, and there's realistically you could like slash this in about a third of what's here, but I want to be thorough where I can. Let's talk about the trainer cards first. There are a few reprints that we had here as well. Pokemon Catcher gets a reprint over here. There's a few that stay in format that we have, so that's kind of neat. Like, Energy Retrieval is good here. Energy Search will be good when we move to Sword Shield on, so it's worth knowing that this is in format, even if it's not good until much later. Great Ball gets a reprint here. This actually does see some play as well, which is kind of sad, but there you go. Lucky Egg actually gets a reprint all the way back from Gen 4, so if the thing that this is attached to is KO'd by damage, you get to draw until you have 7 in hand. Doesn't even have to be active either, so if it gets sniped off the bench, it still counts. That's kind of neat. And yeah, that's it for the main sort of reprint bit, so let's go into what is new. Air Balloon is a replacement for Floatstone. It makes your retreat cost 2 less, so it doesn't reduce it to 0, because Floatstone was honestly overpowered, and this is the balanced version of it. Honestly, kind of neat. Almost wish this was an evergreen card at this point, because I think this is a fair spot to sit it, but, you know, whatever. It's good when we have it. Bead is interesting. Attach a basic energy from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon as a supporter card. It does have to come from hand, which is sort of annoying, and it is the supporter for turn, so it won't see play really, but at least the effect is interesting. Generic energy acceleration could be really good for a fighting deck, for example, so that's kind of cool. Big Charm lets any Pokemon get plus 30 HP, so not as effective as, say, Fighting Fury Belt or, you know, Bodybuilding Dumbbells or something, but every Pokemon gets to use this, including the gigantic VMAXs and stuff from this set, so yeah, pretty alright. Make a tag team have like 300 HP is kind of ridiculous, right? Evolution Incense lets you just straight up search for an evolution Pokemon. It is an item version of Professor Elm's training method, for anyone who remembers that. Honestly, amazing card. I kind of wish this was also evergreen. This is the good side of Timer Ball, more or less. Timer Ball could get more, but it also could get nothing, so I like the consistency. I like the card. Hyper Potion gets a reprint from Skyridge with new text. This will heal 120 damage from one Pokemon with at least 2 energy attached to it, but you have to discard 2 energy in order to use it. Best deck that I've used this with at the moment is Snorlax with Porygon Z, because if you discard Recycle energy, it goes back to the hand, and Porygon Z can accelerate the special energy back to your board, so pretty good. Marnie! Fuck this card. Okay, I want to stay positive, but this card is honestly stupid, like unbelievably stupid. Each player shuffles their hand and puts it on the bottom of their deck. If either player put any cards to the bottom of the deck this way, you draw 5 and the opponent draws 4. This card does have a lot of skill-based utility to it as well, but it mostly just reads mess the opponent up and nothing else. That's not true, but like, draw 5 is a bit weaker than most of the other supporter cards you'd be using, so that can kind of get annoying at times. But bottom decking the cards, it's different from what we've had before, right? It's not a shuffle draw, so you can't redraw those cards. but you can't redraw those cards, which means if you have done like a search effect on your attack or whatever, say that Charizard Brazen deck that I played before, and search your thing with Brilliant Flare, then you get Marnied, you're not getting those cards back, like at all. There is zero chance that you're getting those cards back. So it's really annoying for that aspect. And overall, it's just, because you can't play a supporter going first, if the opponent, I mean, this would happen even if you were going first and you could, you Marnie the opponent and suddenly they're just like, well, I've just bricked because of Marnie, right? Super, super annoying card. There's some counterplay in this set, which is using the Oranguru that we'll see at the very end here, but it's still just a really dumb card to have, and I hate the fact of it's basically a 3 or 4 of in every deck that's like worth its salt. Metal Saucer is Dark Patch for a Metal Pokemon, which wouldn't be a problem if only there's like no good Metal Pokemon in the format, right? Yeah, this card's a problem. We'll talk about it later. Ordinary Rod is the recovery we've been hoping for. Brock's Grit can go shove it as far as I'm concerned now. You get to choose one or both. You do have to choose. I mean, if we're playing on a simulator, you would have to choose when you activate the card, which is kind of weird. But you either shuffle up to 2 basic Pokemon from the discard pile into the deck, up to 2 basic energy from the discard pile into the deck, or you can do both. So if you, on the simulator on PTCGO, you would have to select beforehand, and if you chose to do both, you had to shuffle at least one of each. It's very silly, but I guess it's just the way it had to work out, really, because this card is very modal, as you can see. Used all the time until it rotates, because, of course, it is basically better than Super Rod under most circumstances, unless you need exactly 3 Pokemon or 3 energy. But that's fine, because this still gets plenty of stuff back, and you can just get like the 1 energy you need or something back into the deck if you don't want to bulk it out, which is really good. We talked about the catcher stuff. This comes back and actually does see play this set. It sees play sporadically in the future as well, like Pokemon Catcher just generally does, but any deck that has like an item heavy focus can use this thing. But this actually sees a lot of play in this set, because there's a lot of dumb strategies that you can bypass a little bit by having this. So yeah, definitely gotta play Catcher, unfortunately. Professor's Research, I didn't actually talk about what it does. It is just discard your hand, draw 7. This is now evergreen, at least for now. I don't know if Research is going to stay in Generation 10, but at least for now, it's in every format. So yeah, very, very powerful, of course, and controversial for a lot of people. I know a few friends that are just like, this card shouldn't exist, but it does, so whatever. Quick Ball gets a major change from what it did in Gen 4. It now discards a card from your hand to search your deck for a basic Pokemon, which, yeah, we've been dying for that sort of search. Very, very useful, because it means we could finally search non-GX basics as well. That and Evolution in sense means that we do have the capability to play non-GX decks again. Hooray! Too bad they're all outdone by ADP though, right? ADP just kills every single one of them, so oh well. Rotom Bike is not a very good card, to be honest, but it is an item that acts like a supporter in a way. You draw until you have 6 cards in your hand, so same as what Lily does here, which, by the way, rip Lily with these new supporter rules and stuff as well. If you go first, you just never get the ability to draw until 8 in hand. Sucks. Anyway, this ends your turn if you draw if you play it in general, so not super useful, unfortunately. Mega Evolution was not a good mechanic until Spirit Links. This is the same sort of bit. Team Yell Grunt is a supporter that puts an energy from one of the opponent's Pokemon into their hand. Guess it's kind of meant to be disruptive towards very specific decks, but putting it back in the hand, unless you reset Stamp in the same turn, I guess, it's probably not that useful, right? So, I don't know. Weird card to me. And then Vitality Band is our one tool in here. This is half of a muscle belt, or muscle band even. Gives you plus 10 damage to the opponent's active. Does actually see some play because 10 damage is enough to matter at times. So yeah, it's still, like, imagine if the Reshiram deck from last round had this, and you'd be able to go 10 damage extra, do 280, knock out ADP in one shot. It's alright, yep. So, yeah, we got our free tools, got the Air Balloon, the Big Charm, and the Vitality Band. It's pretty good. Aurora Energy is our actual only special energy in the set, and it's Rainbow Energy if you discard a card when you play it. So Mewtwo and Mew is perfect for this. I'm not sure if I'm even going to want to play a deck with it that way, but Mewtwo and Mew can discard one of its Evolution GXs from the hand, so it can use the attacks on that Pokemon. And now it's got Rainbow Energy, so it can play all sorts of different stuff without having to take the damage counter and being vulnerable to Mimikyu. Pretty good. Pokemon-wise, let's try and run through some of these a bit quicker. Celebi is not great, 180 HP, Pokemon V. I do want to kind of note the VMAX mechanic, but we'll get to that when we get to Lapras. Yeah, 180 HP, 2 Pfizer, does 150 damage if you fill your bench for Grass and Colorless. It's alright, but 150 is not that impressive, and 180 HP is very easy to knock out, so not super good. Doesn't even bench the Pokemon that it reveals, so it's just going to get Marnie with its first attack. It's pretty lame. Dhelmise is 220 HP. This is where we start seeing the sort of baseline for the Pokemon V here. It's alright. If any of your Grass Pokemon got KO'd last turn, it does 120 for a Grass Energy. It's pretty good. Decent revenge style attack. And Giga Hammer does 200 for two Grass and a Colorless, but it can't use Giga Hammer next turn. That's fine. Surprisingly low retreat for this thing too. You can retreat this for just an Air Balloon, which is neat. It gets a VMAX in a later set, which might end up making this one see play. We'll just have to see. Rillaboom is a very decent grass type. We do have the Rowlet and Alolan Executor that we can use to help evolve this immediately as an attack for no energy too, so that's kind of neat. And once during your turn, you can search your deck for 2 grass energy, put them onto one of your Pokemon. So, per Rillaboom, by the way, it's a soft once per turn. So, this is very much like Vikavolt from the Sun and Moon base set, but it's fully grass energy this time. It's not grass and lightning, which means you can streamline your attacks a little bit more. I've seen a Mewtwo Mew deck that plays this, actually. It's kind of neat. But, yeah, there's a few things that you can consider this for as we go. Grass is not traditionally the best type out there, and I mean, Fire is still very popular at the moment. But, yeah, for Mewtwo Mew, you could probably make this work, so... because then you're not weak to Fire on everything. Orbeetle is a very annoying card. It's sort of like Chip Chip Ice Axe on the stage 2, but you don't get to shuffle every other card back in. You look at the top 3 of the opponent's deck once per turn, put them back in any order, so you're just... if you're in a control situation, if you can manage to get these out, maybe Rowlet alone and Executor with this could do a thing, right? And just make sure that the opponent never draws a good card, strip the rest of their hand away, be that guy. It's very irritating. Chip Chip Ice Axe tends to do it better, but I have seen, I believe Sander did build a deck with this at one point. Torkoal is an interesting card for Welder Box, 210 HP, 2 relatively okay attacks, for 2 Fire and a Colorless you do 90, discard the top card of your deck, and if it's a Fire Energy do 180 instead. So, pretty reasonable number for the energy, to be honest, on the basic. And 2 free Fire even, and 1 Colorless to do only 120 with Steam Crush, but it discards 2 energy from the opponent's active, which is a lot to come back from, actually. So, yeah, it's alright. It's a little expensive, but with Heatran available, you'd be able to absorb the energy after you've used this enough. And it's got 4 energy to its retreat cost, which matters for buff padding, so I guess it's kind of cool. Victini is the more generally played Pokemon V from the set for fire types. 190 HP is not the biggest. 2 retreat is big for a Victini, unfortunately. But both its attacks are fine. For 1 colorless energy, you attach up to 3 fire from the discard to your Pokemon in any way that you like. So with a fire deck being able to do Fiery Flint, Giant Hearth, or Heat Factory, discard a whole bunch of stuff on turn 1, you could accelerate quite easily with this. And Energy Burst is a gigantic X-Ball. 2 fire energy to do 30 for each energy that is on both active Pokemon. So Welder plus Attach, you add 90 to this as your base. and if the opponent has to have a decent amount of energy on them anyway, like ADP or Zacian especially, you can knock them out with stuff that way too. So it's pretty good. Cinderace is better than I gave it credit for. It's still a stage 2 attacker though, so you know, 170 HP and 1 attack that for 2 fire in the colors does 190. Discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. It's alright. But it works because of Libero. It does not change your type, unfortunately, but what it does do is when you move from bench to active, you put up to 2 fire energy from the discard to this Pokemon. So with a single energy retreat as well, recycle energy can go back to the hand to pay retreat, go to the next Cinderace, that gets 2 energy from the discard pile to itself, attached to recycle, 190. You can chain that as often as you can get more Cinderace in play. That is the sticking point, is getting enough Cinderace in play, but the card is alright, and it's a single prizer, right? So you can trade relatively well if you can work into it. The problem, of course, is if they can heal the gigantic Pokemon, but, you know, can't win them all. Center Scorch, funnily enough, this stays in format until the Pokemon Go set with the Charizard that doubles fire energy stuff that's on your fire Pokemon, so we can do some funny stuff with it then. It's basically Moltres without the discard. For each fire energy that's on this thing, discard the top card of the opponent's deck. That's it. That's all it does. It's not amazing until you can double its energy that's on the actual Center Scorch. And from there it gets kind of funny if nothing else. So yeah. Let's talk about the VMAX mechanic now. The Pokemon V, you may have noticed, they are all basic. They're actually all basic Pokemon so far, which is kind of funny. But yeah, that actually holds out for this entire set. How weird is that? Pokemon V are basically EXs from the Gen 5 block, where they have like 1 or 2 attacks, a good amount of HP, they're only basic Pokemon even when they're normally evolved, and they give up 2 prizes when they get KO'd. However, some of them can Dynamax or Gigantamax depending on the Pokemon. It's the same mechanic, but it just is worded different at the top just because they can. They never did anything but that, by the way. There's nothing that says like Dynamax or Gigantamax is a thing. That's not a tag, unfortunately. They evolve into free prize Pokemon that have even more HP than what the tag teams did. But they are evolutions at this point, so I guess you would kind of hope for that. And they have 1 or 2 attacks depending on the Pokemon, and just do stuff that way. I think some of them do end up getting abilities as well. Shadow Rider Calyrex, for example. In this case, Lapras V is a 210 HP. It's being treated as a water type, not an ice type, so it is weak to lightning this time around, which is why this card sees 0 play, unfortunately. Rest of it's pretty good though. 1 colorless energy, attach a water from your hand to this Pokemon, and then you switch it to the bench, which is pretty good. For 3 water on the colorless, it does 210, and puts 2 energy, water energy specifically, from this Pokemon to the hand. That can then get attached with the Frostmoth we'll talk about later, but you probably want to go just into the VMAX where possible, because for 3 colorless energy, you do 90 plus 30 for each water that's on this Pokemon. So minimum of 180 when you can pay for the attack. On a 320 HP body is hard to KO, so it's kind of neat. I do also want to note, Lapras itself has only got a 2 energy retreat, which is very light for Lapras, and the VMAX has got a 3 energy, but this still means Air Balloon lets it retreat for 1 energy, so you can kind of get around some of the other like potential issues with this stuff. It's good. Again, lightning weakness is the problem, but you can scale this to do like 270 plus damage. It's kind of fun. Keldeo is the significantly weaker version of it, and we'll see even less play as a result. 210 HP, 2 retreats, so at least it's Air Balloon compatible. But yeah, 40 for 1 water, bleh. Secret Sword does 50 plus 30 for each water that's on it, so 40 less damage than what the Lapras does. That matters a lot actually, because it means you need an extra like 2 energy to get 2 shots on things. The main thing this is good for is if people start trying to get too cute and replay Keldeo V in any decks, then not Keldeo V, Keldeo GX in any of the decks, because tag team stuff is still, like, old format stuff is still probably better than most of the stuff in this set. you could use this in a water deck to be like, haha, now I can counter that and not get killed by the stuff there. It's not great, but there you go. I want to mention Drizzile and Inteleon specifically here. They don't see play for a while, not until I think the other Inteleon comes out, but I don't see why not. I think this was a hindsight thing, to be fair. Drizzile, when you evolve into it, lets you search for any one trainer card out of your deck, not just items like the old Ninetales did. Inteleon, if you evolve into it, searches for 2 trainer cards. We can't quite use this to its fullest potential yet, but Scoop Up Net is not too far into the generation, and when that comes out we'd be able to recover this Inteleon and replay all the parts down, and we will probably see an awful lot of the Shady Dealings engine, because when it eventually got discovered, man oh man was this good. So we'll see if it can do some work earlier on in the generation as well. I mentioned Frostmoth before as an ice type. This is Metal Weak, just to show the difference here, that Lapras is being treated as a water type this time around. Only 90 HP. That actually comes up at some point with Level Ball potentially, but that is not for a very long time. Its Ice Dance is like the old Blastoise from the base set, except it's only to bench Pokemon this time. So often as you like during your turn, attach a water from your hand to one of your benched water Pokemon. The key thing here is that it's a stage 1 instead of a stage 2, so it's a lot easier to get out, and you may be thinking Quagsire sort of bits at this point, but this guy's a bit stronger than that, I think. If Excalibur can see play nowadays, this can definitely see play beforehand. The thing is, you've just got to have good water Pokemon to go to, and realistically the problem with that now is that they're all going to be weak to Pikarom, or stuff like this guy, which gets played in Pikarom. Tapu Koko V is a 200 HP Zero Retreat Pokemon, which is really good to note, and it's got 2 pretty good attacks here. Spike Draw does 20 for 1 Lightning, draws 2 cards. It's alright. Decent early game thing. If you escape board Rachi, go into this, you could Spike Draw, get some stuff going. Thunderous Bolt does 200 damage for 2 Lightning in the colorless, and this Pokemon cannot attack period in the next turn. But it's got 0 retreat, so we probably don't really care about that. Obviously 200 is a reasonable number in its own right, but we can boost this with Electro Power as well to make it useful. Thunder Mountain can make it attack for very little energy actually. If you're behind on prizes, Thunder Mountain counter gain makes it attack for 1 lightning, which is very powerful actually for how much it does. So yeah, Picarom's really good. I may have to try and build it again just because I don't have a lot else to do this round that's actually good. More Pico V! Heck this card, but then again it was just an unfortunate thing in testing. 170 HP, 2 retreat as well, it's kind of big, but whatever. Yeah, very frail Pokemon this one, but that's fine because it's never staying active anyway. For 1 colorless energy, Spot does 20 and 20 to one of the opponent's bench. If you have to use this, you're probably in trouble, but that is what it is. Electro Wheel does 150 for 2 Lightning in the colorless. It discards an energy from this Pokemon to do this, but if you do that, you switch to the bench, which means you can switch into a Pokédoll and not give up any prizes, and then just do this again and again and again, and then yeah, it's really annoying. It evolves into Morpeko VMAX. I want to note that VMAX is not the same as Stage 1, so Ditto cannot evolve into these things, just as a heads up. Max Discharge on this 300 HP VMAX that now only has 1 retreat. Somehow it like grew 50 stories higher and like taller, and it only has 1 retreat now. Work that one out if you will. 180 damage and 20 to each of the opponent's bench. So it kind of is, I guess, supposed to work on the thing of what Spark was doing, but realistically that's not happening. Yeah, good amount of damage, decent benching as well. It's very frail for what it is though. Fighting is not the best type at the moment, so you're probably okay there, but it's still very awkward, you know? Just giving up this many prizes when you're very easily 2-shot, and the damage is good, but not spectacular, right? I guess the idea is that you're trying to flood the opponent's board with too much bench damage and whatnot. Maybe you could use this with Tapu Lele? It's not really doing it for me. Rapidash I'm only noting because, well, it can stop you from being affected by special conditions. We have seen this effect be played before, but it's only really been played on Virizion EX, and that was solely because Virizion EX was insane in its own right. We have Cobalion that can do this at the moment as well if you have energy attached to you, and it doesn't see play, right? So yeah, special conditions are not strong enough to warrant this at the moment, and so many switching cards get played that paralysis is easy to get out of. Gengar's an interesting effect here. It lets you shift damage away from your Psychic Pokemon to your other Psychic Pokemon, so you could potentially get all the damage on one thing that you could Super Scoop up or something. Not really necessary, and it's far too frail in its own right. 110 HP is nothing for a Stage 2, so like, yeah. It's supposed to be used with a Wobbuffet over here. For 2 colorless energy, this 220 HP Wobbuffet lets you shift all damage counters between active Pokemon, so you swap your damage with the opponent's. We had seen this effect played before. It was pretty... excuse me. Was pretty devastating with Mewtwo EX, the Mega Mewtwo stuff, with Shrine of Memories, because like 210 HP was really hard to one-shot, and if you did any significant amount of damage to it, it could just swap all of it to full heal itself, and probably KO you as well. Wobbuffet doesn't really have that benefit, and like 250 HP is the highest you can get this with a Big Charm. It's just not enough, right? There's a cool idea behind it, but it's not getting there. The other thing you could do with a Gengar is to shift a little bit of damage over to the active, if that's where like your damage is on bench or whatever, and using DDV to once per turn heal 20 from your active Pokemon. It is a Psychic type in its own right, so you could like absorb damage around the board, heal the rest of it from your active, and then go from there. Not great. It's probably better used with other tanking VMAX type stuff alongside Hyper Potion and Mallow and Lana, but hey, it's possible. And yeah, this card's pretty alright. It has seen play in a few different decks. Psychic is also interesting if the opponent overloads on energy. 10 plus 60 for each energy they have on them. For a Psychic double colorless is not the worst cost to pay, so like Mewtwo and Mew could maybe use it as well. Mewtwo and Mew could use it in order to heal damage to get away from Mimikyu as well, so yeah. Regirock, not amazing, 220 HP. It's got a rage-based attack, which is neat. 30 plus 10 for each damage counter on it for fighting colorless. It's alright. Add a second fighting to that, you do 190, but you also do 30 to yourself, which is supposed to fuel the first attack, but it functionally means this only has 190 HP, which is just not that sturdy. Fighting also still has issues with acceleration, but at least there's like Karate Belt you could use, or Counter Gain. Both of them actually work for this thing. It's fine, but nothing too special. Stonejourner, I think, did see play eventually, but didn't end up having any success in this opening set. 220 HP, free energy retreat on both of them, which is annoying, because it means you can't use buff padding with this thing. That would have been very funny. It lets you do 40 damage for 1 fighting energy, and you take 20 less from attacks next turn. We can get this up to about 70 with Diancie and Martial Arts Dojo, so that's kind of neat. Free fighting energy is a Mega Kick for 150. Underwhelming, but it hits for good weaknesses, so I guess that's still fine. And then Stonejourner VMAX lets you accelerate a fighting energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon for a single fighting of itself. If you do that, you heal 120 from that Pokemon, so half the idea of this is to use itself, like accelerate to itself, right, in order to heal the stuff it's taken in the active. And Max Rockfall does 200 damage for free fighting energy, so not the highest damage, but again, it hits a good weakness, so it's usually okay. 330 HP is huge on this, and if you Hyper Potion stuff as well, it's going to be hard to attack constantly doing that, but you can heal a lot with this, so kind of neat. I think it gets better later when we have stuff like Cheryl that can Max Potion it, basically, so keep an eye on it. Galarian Zigzagoon is a very common card to see in this set, actually, because it's basically Crobat G. You get to put a damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon when you bench it. That's pretty much it, but it's very easily searchable, and extra 10 damage can matter quite a lot, so good card. The Evolution line, unfortunately Linoon never gets in a Pokemon that can put damage counters down. Really wish it did, that just put 2 damage when evolve into it would have been great. The Obstagoon, on the other hand, does. So 160 HP is relevant because we attack with this thing sometimes as well. If you evolve into this, put 3 damage counters on one of the opponent's Pokemon, and then for a Dark and a Colorless, you do 90, and during the opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this by basics. This actually prompted most basic only decks, like the Tag Team GX type stuff, to play Fione, because they had to have some way of repelling this to the bench so that they could actually get damage in. The problem is then they put in a Pokédoll and you don't take any prizes anyway. So, yeah. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's still very strong in its own right. So, the damage counter spread also helps a lot there. I think the idea with the damage counter spread is it's supposed to work with Sableye V, but this seems a little bit extra to me. 170 HP, very frail, but it's got some very powerful attacks here, so I guess it works out. For a single Darkness Energy, put any trainer card from your discard pile into the hand, so you can get a supporter back with this. It's not Junk Hunt, because you only get 1, but it does get anything, so that's kind of neat. And then 2 Darkness Energy for Crazy Claws, 10 plus 60 for each damage counter on the opponent's active Pokemon. So 5 damage counters is the absolute cap that you want to hit with this, so that you can KO everything in the game. With 5 damage counters, you're effectively doing 350 damage. With 4 damage counters, you essentially do 280, which is enough to KO tag teams. That's typically the bit that you need. But 5 is where you want to go. 6 if you want to kill a buff-padded Snorlax, but we'll get there. Toxicroak is interesting. You put 2 more damage counters on the opponent's poison Pokemon between turns. This is where the during Pokemon checkup thing comes in, by the way, from the start. So yeah, extra damage, kind of neat. Doesn't really do much by itself, especially because it doesn't even auto poison with its attack. That's kind of lame. But I don't know, if you really wanted to use this, I guess you could do Koga's Trap. Would be funny with it. So yeah, but an extra 20 damage, not a bad thing to have around. And it does stack if you get multiple in play. There might not be a good Feeble to talk about, but Nickit is actually really annoying. For a single Darkness Energy, the opponent bottom decks their hand and only draws 3 cards to go outside of it. So you're essentially Marnieing the opponent, because I mean, it's even worse than Marnie, right? Because they draw up to 4 and they draw for turn. So yeah, right. Dick of a card for control decks, this one. Not really super good otherwise, but still. Control is not the only archetype that we can play though. Metal types get quite a lot of bonuses in this set, as you can imagine. Berserker is one of them, which is at least interesting. Your metal Pokemon's attacks do 20 more to the opponent's active, so you can scale up to KO some really dumb things with this. This matters a fair bit because the poster child of this set, just like it was in the competitive game, is Zacian. This card is so dumb, dude. Why did they print this one? 220 HP. 2 retreat, so it's air balloon compatible as well, because we can't have it be any weaknesses on this card, right? Its ability lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck once per turn, and then attach any metal energy that you find in that to this Pokemon, and add the other cards to the hand. Your turn ends when you use it, but this effectively just reads draw 3 cards for any deck, functionally. But in its own deck, it can accelerate energy too, and basically make it run out of control unbelievably quickly, which is super annoying. Its attack does cost pure metal energy, which is a little bit of a hindrance for splash ability, but only marginally. 230 damage for free metal energy, cannot attack next turn. Oh no, what are we going to do? We're going to air balloon switch out to another one and attack with that instead, and just cycle it through. Very stupid. Obviously, the biggest offender with this is, as we're going to see this round from Pepper, is ADP, because that deck already used Metal Energy, and makes this take extra prizes and do 260. Which, if you ping an extra 10 somewhere, that KOs tag teams for 4 prizes with 1 attack here. Very, very dumb. Zamazenta is not nearly as strong, but is pretty annoying against the main deck I want to play this round, actually. This guy is a 230 HP dude, also 2 retreat. Zamazenta is surprisingly fast, actually, for having a shield that heavy around him. Dauntless Shield prevents all damage done to this Pokemon by the opposing VMAXs. So, yeah, the Snorlax deck, the main thing I'm playing this time around, we'll talk about that in just a sec because he's next, almost completely stopped by this guy. Really annoying. Even more so because of his attack too. For 2 metal and the colorless, Assault Tackle does 130 and discards a special energy from the opponent's active Pokemon. My deck is only special energy, so that is really annoying to me. Yeah, this card is fine. It sees some play mostly in the dedicated Zacian deck, but it still sees play as well. This card is fine. Snorlax, the one time we get to see this guy, and because he doesn't get a reprint, which is weird. 220 HP, both Snorlax and the VMAX get a 4 energy retreat cost, so buff padding will give it plus 50 HP here, which is ridiculous. For 3 colors energy, this guy does 60 and heals as much as it dealt, which is cool, I suppose. 60 heal 60 is fine, I guess. Not the worst card out there for attack-wise for something that evolves. Falling down is pretty reasonable as well. Put a 4th energy on it. It does 170 and puts itself to sleep. You don't really want to put a 4th energy on this though, because Snorlax VMAX only uses 3 energy. So unless you're planning a Hyper Potion play next turn, assuming you'll survive, yeah. 340 HP on Snorlax VMAX, the largest dude in the set, and the largest dude we have seen so far. I think even nowadays, I can't think of a card that goes above this HP total yet. Like, there are effective HP totals above this. Like, Blastoise has got effectively 360, but I can't think of something that actually is above this at the time of recording. That's how dumb the power creep got here, I guess. Gmax Fall for 3 colorless energy does 60 plus 30 for each of your bench Pokemon. This was much better in Expanded than it was in Standard, but it's still insane in Standard as well. In Standard format, we can hit 210 damage with this guy. In Expanded with Skyfield, you could hit 300. That's how dumb it kind of gets there. As a result, it didn't really see success in Standard, but I think it's still insane, so I'm playing it anyway, because the card is cool. Cinccino basically replaces Pidgeotto in the control decks, especially because you can't play Professor Elm's Lecture going first anymore. This is arguably the better thing. It's trade. When you discard a card from your hand, draw 2 cards. Energy Assist is also like neat, but you're probably not going to see it because it's a 90 HP Pokemon here. 1 colorless energy, 40 damage, attach a basic energy from the discard to one of your bench. Kind of just replaces its own energy, so not super good. And puts your Cinccino in the firing line. So yeah, it's just, unfortunately, this one is generally just a control tool, because it lets you discard stuff you don't need, draw deep into the deck, get to the bottom of it for the Guru, blah 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 blah, do the usual stuff that way. Pidgeotto is less destructive, but it also, the discard actually is sometimes really good, because it means that if you get Marnie or something, you don't shuffle back a bunch of stuff that you don't want anyway, so yeah. Oranguru! Don't worry, this one's not quite as busted. This is the counterplay to Marnie, is actually really nice. Also, don't worry that the artwork is not amazing here. We have a much better version to play. Effectively, the thing you need to know about this card is, well, one, it's got 2 retreats, so air balloon compatible. And the second is the ability that once per turn switches a card from your hand with the top card of the deck. So if you can do this at the end of a turn, just as the one example here, do it at the end of the turn, it means that you can keep a card on top of the deck, so if the opponent Marnies you, you draw into that card and you can make sure your next turn is actually good. There are many other ways this card is amazing, but that is the first one that just easily comes to mind. Marnie Proof Yourself. Very good. The final card to talk about here is Cramorant Bee. This card is really good even before it gets a VMAX. 200 HP, a little bit frail, but it's only 1 retreat, which is good. Lightning weakness is unfortunate, but it still has utility in that sort of matchup as well. Beak Catch is its first attack here. For 1 colorless energy, it searches your deck for up to 2 cards, puts them into the hand. You're going to get Marnied right after that, unfortunately, but if you've not got a better option, this is a reasonable turn 1 play. The attack we care about is Spit Shot over here. For 3 colorless energy, you discard all the energy on this Pokemon and snipe 150, no, not even 150, 160 damage to the opponent's Pokemon, whichever one you choose. If the opponent doesn't have a Mew in play, their Dedenes, which are a very big part of this format, are they're just toast. They just get shot. Very good for Welder decks, obviously, because Welder plus Attach gets there. Very good for my Snorlax deck as well, because I play Recycle Energy, so Recycle Porygon Z also gets there. Good utility on this card. Pair it with a Zigzagoon and you can actually hit 170, 180 HP things too, which is important. And that is that. This set, again, it's like fine, but when you compare it to some of the other openings that we've had so far, like opening sets of a generation, this is very much more akin to like the Gen 3 opening set than it is Gen 7, right? Or even XY. Like, XY had a lot of crazy trainer cards. This one has a lot of crazy trainers too, to be fair. Quick Ball, Evolution Incense, Air Balloon's really good, Big Charm is solid, Ordinary Rod is insane, like Professor's Research Mine, all of these are in really, really, really strong cards. But as far as the actual Pokemon go, not a lot really rocks the boat here. A lot of it is just established archetypes and then things that were tried but didn't go anywhere, apparently. I think Snorlax still could have seen play, but again, this was the time when tournaments stopped, so maybe it just didn't work out because of that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching here. Hopefully you found this interesting enough. We might only do one session with this one because we're all kind of like nonplussed with this set, to be fair, but we'll see how it goes. Until next time though, thanks for watching again and take care.